Allie, thank you so very much for joining us today.
I know. Thank you for having me. I can't believe it's your last one, but I'm so honored to be here with you for this one. And I'm just so excited. I agree. We had so much fun getting to know each other. This is a topic I love to talk about. So I'm really happy to be here today.
Yeah, and this is all about niching down, and there's this whole cliche and this fear of like niching down too much and kind of exiling yourself or away from other patients. But we're going to dive into some great conversation as how that's actually could potentially grow your practice and make you that go-to expert for whatever it is that you want to niche down into. Um, So I just want to start with a quick reflection, Ali. Like, what was the turning point for you when you realized that specializing actually helped you grow?
I think it was when I kind of had a moment of like, I feel like we kind of, a lot of us start as generalists because you have to. You're
Mhm.
starting out in the field and you're kind of taking what comes to you. And I noticed I was feeling really fulfilled by certain populations I was working with, and others were draining me, like in the most loving way. Like just certain populations, just I realized I wasn't really feeling like I was flourishing in. And so when I started to really lean into the noticing like what types of clients and cases made me feel excited and passionate and fulfilled and leaning into that and feeling more excited about certain things,
Mhm.
I feel like that's when I was like, okay, wait, something's happening. I need to like pay attention to this more.
For sure. It sounds like it's a little bit of self-care right there, right? It's like finding what fills your cup instead of keeps emptying your cup day in and day in and day in and day out, where you don't have any more to give.
Hmm.
That's great. I kind of follow that same thought process. Like you come out of school and you're a basicist. I use basicist. We can treat everything, but we're not experts in anything, right? Like they
Hmm.
kind of give us everything they're on there for. Um, but as you know, as I open the doors here between the lines, you see back pain, athletes, a sedentary lifestyle, everything under the scope. And then as you get more clients and more practice, you understand what you like to treat, what you hate
Hmm.
to treat, what who you thrive with, who you vibe with, so on and so forth. So niching down is actually it's a lot of fun because now work doesn't feel like those big giants suck, right? Like it's
Yes.
it's like now I'm like, oh cool, I got energy. Let's go do our thing. Yeah. So how did you land on your niche? How did you land there, and what were the signs that kind of pointed you there outside of like this patient? It's not necessarily my this client's not necessarily my cup of tea versus this
Yeah, I think I started to notice as well, not just with clients, but in like kind of like the field, and especially like in my state, I'm in Connecticut. I started to notice where there were some gaps, like where I started to talk to other providers and they'd be like, "Oh, I really want to send people your way because there aren't a lot of people who are doing it in the way that you do it." And so I started noticing that there was space for me to have a niche because it wasn't being fulfilled by other people. And I do things differently, and I think when you're starting out, sometimes that can feel like, am I doing something wrong because no one else is doing it? And I was like, oh no, what's happening? But then kind of realizing, no, that's a strength. Like, just like we're saying, like niching down, it can be such a strength. And it's okay to do things differently because that means that other people aren't doing it. And there's probably always going to be a need for it. And so
one.
I think that also started to really open my eyes when I would connect and network and talk to other providers and have those realizations. And I'm like, this is a strength I need to be really leaning into more, not shying away from it and not talking about it.
For sure, for sure. And the whole deal is like we talked about this maybe a few episodes ago. We were talking how do you're not the perfect fit for every patient, right? And
Yes.
that's essentially what you're doing with niche now. Like you're eliminating that process. Like, do they fit me? Do I fit them? Now I'm niche down. I know we can fit. Like there is
Hmm.
a greater chance that we're going to work well together. We're going to grow together. We're going to help you reach your respective goals, your potential goals, and so on and so forth. So, did you ever worry about turning away patients or clients by narrowing your focus?
Yes. And I think that or at least I can speak for myself, like sometimes the guilt as a provider is very real, where it's like we come into these fields because we want to help people. And so I think sometimes turning people away and having the fear of turning people away can just be like, oh my gosh, am I not doing what I'm supposed to do of like helping people? I feel guilty saying no to someone if they really want to work with me. But I think it's getting past that and trying to take ourselves out of it, even though it is about us, but just really having the realizations of like, if I'm really leaning into what my niche is, what makes me feel great, I can then support clients in the best way and I can show up the best way for those clients. And especially if it's something that isn't my niche, I'm not really fulfilled by, maybe it's not my area of focus, I'm probably not going to do the best for that client anyways. And
Yeah,
I can empower them and support them into finding the best fit for them. So it definitely comes with a lot of fear and for myself, definitely some guilt, but it's just
sure,
trying to reframe it and remind myself that like I'm not going to be the best fit for everybody and that
for
is
sure.
okay.
For sure, for sure. And I just like to follow up with from your talking points. It seems like there's three key points in regards to niching down and those signs. It's passion,
Mhm,
market demand, because you had people asking like, we don't have anybody in this space, and differentiation. You know,
mhm,
I think those are three pillars when it comes to niching down that kind of help you navigate that fear. It's like, am I passionate about it? Cool. We're going to love doing it. Is there a demand for it? There's always a chance for somebody to come through the door.
mhm.
Differentiation. Is anybody doing it like me? Or if they are, how am I separating myself from them? Right. So
Yes.
I think those are great points, Ali. It's breath of fresh air because I remember niching down and being fearful, even though I played football. It's like that should be easy. Like, oh, he's an athlete, yada yada yada. Still gotta build that trust, show that I'm passionate about it. And Denver's super saturated with sports PT, so it's like, what makes me different as far as niching down into that sport
Mhm.
space? Um, Next question: what's the biggest misconception about niching down that holds practitioners back?
Yes. Oh, I feel like it does feel like there are many misconceptions. And I think maybe one big one is feeling like you're really boxing yourself in and that you're like limiting yourself to this kind of like very rigid place. And I think that for
Mhm,
me, at least, I think a niche is kind of like it's almost like a foundation, not a fence, right? It's like you don't
mhm,
have to have it be super rigid if you don't want it to be. It can still be just this like thread maybe that kind of connects you into the things that you're doing and focusing on. And it's okay to be flexible at the same time too, because
yep,
if you get to like every single client is your ideal client and you're super niched, amazing. Like that's fantastic. But it's also okay if it's a slow growth into that niche.
mhm,
It's okay if
mhm.
you still kind of have a couple spots that are a little bit more flexible if that's what you want. So I think that maybe sometimes I think in general, maybe we get these ideas in our heads of like it has to be this very certain way. I have to do it, and that's what niching means. And I think that for myself, at least, I try to lean into like what feels good for me, what works for me and my business and my clients. And so again, if you want to have a couple spots that you keep open for whether it's pro bono work or different clients or more accessibility, like great, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be every single person. But then on the other side is if you really want to lean in and focus on only ideal clients, I think that's great too. So maybe that's my long-winded roundabout way of saying of like you don't have to just put yourself into this box. It can be flexible.
Yeah, absolutely. That box. I just think about my kids' playroom and the toy box,
Mhm,
and there's multiple different areas of that toy box, and like we can get more specific, but they still have all these toys to choose from right there. They're in one space. Hopefully, they're in one space. It never is like that at home, but ideally, they're supposed to be in one space. I think that is a huge misconception because yeah, you think, oh, all I'm going to treat athletes, so you're never going to see a gen pop with back pain. That's ridiculous. I, you're in the art space, and are you going to see somebody who just is just clinically depressed and like, just trying to navigate in a different way because we do come out as generalists. So you could treat everything,
mhm,
but you have some things that you feel ideally better at treating or you're more fulfilled and you're more passionate about.
mhm.
Um, how do you explain that specialty in a way that resonates with people? Provide an elevator pitch, the 20-30 second elevator pitch. Oh, hey, how you doing? Actually, hey, how you doing? You're a little taller, so hey, how you doing? What do
Yes.
you do?
Oh man, I have worked really hard, I feel like, on my elevator pitch because I think I'm sure people know, especially I feel like you too, like I could talk forever. To probably anybody. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think for me, it was really learning how to make it short and sweet because as much as we love talking to people and they love hearing about what we do, I think we all start to like glaze over a little bit sometimes.
Mhm, mhm,
So for
mhm,
me, my elevator pitch was like, how can I make this short and sweet and clear in a way for whether I'm talking to referrals or to clients and just finding that balance of like, here's my elevator pitch, like, and if we want to go into more. So for me, mine is short and sweet. So like I help therapists and other providers reconnect with creativity, whether it's personally, professionally, and help them feel more inspired, less burned out, and just manage the things around them. So I try to keep
mhm.
it like a couple sentences, but it has
Awesome.
evolved truly
Yeah.
so much
Yeah.
over time.
As it should, as it should.
Mhm.
It should never be the same thing,
Yeah.
day 1 to day 365 to day
Yeah.
10,309, right? It's like it should be evolving because we as practitioners evolve. And man, so we had a follow-up question to actually those set of questions. How do you differentiate your niche in an already crowded area? Now, I'm curious if that's something that you see in Connecticut. Do you see that competition? Is it crowded in that sense? I mean, we didn't mention the market demand there. It's like we don't have anybody in this space, but do you run into that from time to time?
Yeah, and I will say too, like I feel like a lot of us use social media as well to grow our businesses and things like that.
Hmm.
So I feel like sometimes it's that balance of like the demand in our like local circles, but then thinking about demand online, which makes it even trickier. So I feel like for me, there's like a mix of the things I do for social media and trying to grow my business there versus in Connecticut. And I think for myself, I really try to lean into being authentic because even if people are doing something similar, you're going to do it differently. You know, you ask like
Hmm.
100 providers the same question, you're going to get 100 different answers
So
because
yeah.
what we do has subjectivity to it. So I think that if we can really try to lean into the things that we're passionate about and excited and sharing that and being authentic, and also I think showing some of our humanity too, because I think there's like
Hmm.
sometimes that pressure of like being a perfectionist and showing up a certain way. But I think when we really let our authenticity show, our humanity, and just ourselves, like leaning into
Hmm.
that helps you stand out, even if there are other people who are doing what you're doing, because you're unique and special and amazing and creative
Yep.
and all of these
Yep.
things. And that's going to shine if you let it come through versus like, I feel like, especially with online stuff, there can be this pressure of like, oh, I see someone doing something and they're doing really well. So I must need to do that exact same thing. And I think we
Hmm.
can be inspired by other people we look up towards and admire and our peers, but still bringing you to it because that I
Hmm.
think is what people connect to the most is other people. So even if it's crowded, even if there's other people doing what you do, I think it's really showcasing yourself and how you do that because that's going to shine so brightly. At least I think.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. Owning your story will resonate with whomever, right? And yeah, you bring up a great point with Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Like there's those trending sounds, and you're trying to do the trending sounds, but you don't have to do exactly what they're doing in those trending sounds. Like you can make it your own flavor. But ultimately, I think owning your story is huge. To your point, you're unique. You bring value in so many different ways, so many different capacities. Um, but how do you feel about being hyper specific you're already niching down, but even niching down more? Like, say, I'm a big golfer now, like so golfers with low back pain, like specifically, is what that hyper being hyper specific. How do you feel about hyper specificity when it comes to your ideal client?
Yeah, I feel like that one is interesting because I think again it's kind of like reading the vibes too of like if there is really that demand and that works for you, I think that's amazing. Like if you can really focus in on something so specific, that's great. But I think sometimes we also maybe have the tend to over specify and like limit ourselves. So I think it's again like finding for you like if it feels like there's the demand, if it feels good for you to do that. But I know sometimes too, like I've found myself having like the same like group of clients and then I have to check myself of like okay am I like overseeing something too much so like I feel like I
Mhm,
almost have to check myself sometimes when I'm getting hyper specific to make sure that it's not me like overseeing the same thing in everybody. So I think
mhm.
again maybe I would say it's just about that balance of if that works for you, there's the demand, you feel good in it, that's awesome, but don't maybe make sure you're not limiting yourself too much at the same time.
Yeah. How often do you check yourself?
I feel like if I notice myself, like if I'm doing one-to-one work and I start to feel like I'm having the same conversation kind of over and over, making sure I'm like, wait, this isn't me, making sure it's
Yeah.
not me leading it in the same direction every time,
Hmm.
making
Hmm.
sure. So maybe if I'm feeling like a little Groundhog Day with certain
Hmm.
things, that's maybe a great place to check
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
Or if I notice whether if it's like I'm not seeing as much of something, or I don't know, moments like that where I'm like something feels off in the flow, which I feel like we can kind of sense in
Hmm.
our businesses and the things that we
Yeah.
do. That's a great place
Hmm.
for me to check myself and be like, okay, is it the algorithm? Is it the world? Is it
Yeah.
the season? Is it me? And like including ourselves in that list of questions, maybe.
For sure. For sure. I'm curious to ask, have you built like a signature framework or a tagline or phrase that goes with that social media that that expresses that you're the expert here, or something that people can search and they'll kind of funnel their way to you, right? Those specific keywords that you have to put in your social media or whatever to get more traction and things of that nature. You have any like brand signature frameworks that fit your niche?
Yeah, I would say for me too, like for at least for my business, I can speak to like I have almost like two arms of what I do. I have like my one-to-one like client therapy work, like as a
Hmm.
therapist. And then I also have the work I do with other providers and things like that. So I feel like my social media is more along that lens of like working with providers and things like that. So I feel like I
Hmm.
have things I say like that my clients could all regurgitate of like laughing about. But at least for online and having a presence in social media, like I just don't shut up about creativity. Like that's because I'm so passionate about it. I talk
Yeah.
about it all the time. So I mean that in a good
Hmm.
way. But definitely I really love talking about how anyone can be creative. And I feel like that starts to come back to you where you'll get, people engaging with you or meeting other people. And it's like, oh, I know, like, if I want to talk about creative things, I can go to Allie and talk about that. So I would say that is something that I really am always talking about is that we are all inherently creative as people. And I definitely bring that into the one-to-one work I do with my
Yeah.
clients as an art therapist because most people don't come to me being
Hmm.
like, good at art because that's not what it's
Yeah.
about. But sometimes it's more so like sharing that knowledge. And I think that's part of our niche is like really sharing how this is specific and you might not think you fit into it. Or you might have clients being like, well, I'm not sure if I fit into that. But I think sometimes it's our job as providers to just share that knowledge of like, no, like you don't have to be a trained artist to be creative, like as an example
Hmm.
for the world I'm in, and things like that. So I think it's part of niching down is really about sharing knowledge as well. Because as much as I wish that we all opened our businesses and put our name on the door and like I had a line out the door of like my most ideal client, like
Hmm.
I don't know how often that happens. So I think
Yeah.
a part of it is really sharing with your like clients, with other providers, other people. If you're sharing online, I think there is a big part of that that goes in with niching down is like you have to share about it as well so that people know why
Yep.
it's important.
Yeah, and that kind of is a great segue to lead into our next question: positioning yourself as the expert. Like how utilizing that social media space or creating some framework or where everybody can regurgitate kind of what you say. How else have you positioned yourself as the expert, right?
Yeah, it's actually funny. I always feel like I don't have an aversion to that word, but I feel like sometimes maybe it's my own imposter syndrome where it's like I definitely think I am because I've trained and I've studied it, right? And I talk about it all the time. But I feel like I always look at it of the lens of like, how can I just share with others while still being an expert? But again, that word
Hmm.
always makes me laugh a little bit. And I think it is just consistency. And I think it's showing up, sharing, and I think it's important to network. And whether that's in person, if that's the thing you're focusing on, if it's networking with other providers in your area, if it's showing up online, I think it's just continuing to show and support others at the same time. Because I think that my mentality is like a rising tide lifts all ships. And so I want to find and connect with other people who are doing things, whether it's similar or different to me, because I can't treat every person. I can't work with everyone. So for
Yep.
me, I think becoming an expert and being a go-to, for me, it includes others in that conversation of like, how can I connect with people, share what I do, but learn what they do so that it's like this give and take and really
Yeah.
forming those connections and relationships. So I think that for me, positioning yourself as the expert comes with just connecting with others at the same time.
Hmm. Hmm. Now you bring up a great point with imposter syndrome, and we get it early on in our professional career. You have waves of it here and there. Patient client, their therapy didn't go as planned. Now you're questioning yourself. Like there's all these different facets that come along with it. Um, it seems like it's very common when you're stepping into that expert role. How do you handle it outside of like, oh, I know I've studied this and I know I've spent time here and I know I have all this clinical experience, but even with all that knowledge and that experience, it still can be an overcumbersome burden that's on your shoulders. How do you manage that? How do you handle that imposter syndrome as the expert?
Yeah, I think that a great reminder for myself at least, and if this doesn't stick with you, that's okay, but it's just like we're all making it up anyways. Like I try to remind myself like the work we do is serious, it's important and all of that, but I think at the same time like we're all just showing up as humans. And like I said, you could ask more than 100 providers the same question, you'll get different answers. So I think it's just reminding yourself that like there's always going to be a different answer. There's always going to be someone with a different opinion, but that doesn't mean that you're wrong or that what you're saying is wrong. I think it's just leaning into like the work you're doing, things you're passionate about, how you can support people. And I think like reminding yourselves of the moments where you've had someone maybe share with you, whether it's a client who sent you a nice note or someone messaged you on Instagram, even just saying, hey, the thing, I like the thing you posted. So it's like reminding yourself, like, I have made an impact. Like, I
Mhm.
connect with other people and the things that I'm talking about. So again, even if it's like someone says something different, just it doesn't mean you're wrong. So it's like maybe leaning
Yeah.
into that and reminding yourself in those moments when you're doubting yourself.
Yeah, comparisons happen. We're nature of the beast. Comparisons happen. Oh, did I do this good enough? Why are they doing it like this? Why are they get as many more likes than I did? Like that comparison, just, it happens. But you have to remember to teach what you know. I feel like teach what you know, teach what you're comfortable with, find that community, and I guess a follow up question to that is, as you have niched down, be more specific in the care that you provide. Do you feel like the frequency of imposter syndrome has kind of narrowed itself or got smaller and smaller, like that frequency?
Yeah, I feel like maybe overall, but it still pops up. I feel like especially in
Hmm.
the world of like social media, like especially it like
Yeah.
there's the algorithm changes and all of a sudden no one sees your stuff and it's like, oh my God, this is the worst, right? And it's like this like instant gratification world we live in that sometimes even as much work as I do around it for myself and try to be intentional, like it can still creep up. So as much as I would love to just be like, yes, David, I'm never having imposter syndrome anymore. It's not true. I do. And that's okay because I think it's again just part of my own humanity. So I think it's definitely less and all of the things, but I that's also a great moment when I check in with myself of like if I am feeling like imposter syndrome, especially with social media, those are great cues for myself to like put my phone down, take a step back, connect in different ways, and notice maybe where it's coming from. Because again, sometimes I think it might be more about like whether it's the things that we're consuming or things like that. So I think if there are people who are experiencing that imposter syndrome or questioning, is it my niche? Is it that? Like, where is this coming from? Did you see a video that made you think this? Probably.
Mhm. Right, right. That's for sure. Um, what helped you grow the fastest? Was it content? Was it messaging? And you have two different entities, right? So, like, can you walk us through both of them? Like, what was your messaging and your content, your partnerships on the counseling side, and then as a certified art therapist, what did that look like for you?
Yeah, I really think that it was again, the connection, like really being able to share with people like what I do. And I think that helped me grow a lot and showing how it was different and answering people's questions. Cause I think, especially if you're niching down and you're doing something that's unique, it's like we do kind of have to share about like why it matters in a sense,
Mhm.
because there's always going to be lots of providers and, people dealing with different things. So I think that for me, I noticed when I started to really share, whether it was like addressing misunderstandings or misconceptions, because like with art therapy specifically in the mental health world, a lot of people say they do it who don't have the credentials and training. And I think that can be applied to other different
Yeah,
avenues and
for sure. For
professions,
sure.
right? So I think it's finding ways to share the knowledge about what you're doing, why it's important, your training and things like that. So a lot of it for me was finding that balance of like, how do I tell people that they're not doing art therapy in a very nice way?
Yeah, yeah. Just DMing everybody. Nope, wrong,
Right.
wrong. That's not it. You suck. Like, no, don't go
It
down that
wasn't
route.
that. It wasn't
Don't
that.
go down that.
Yeah, so and I think for like thinking for myself too of like it was thinking about what I was offering. So if I'm thinking too about like cost versus worth was important for me. So I started
Mhm,
offering like different like mini workshops or like webinars or
okay.
offering to talk and share that knowledge. And I feel like that was a way where it's like I would love everything that I do to be paid. Of course, that's great. That's always
Mhm,
the goal.
mhm,
But also for me looking at that cost versus worth of like how can I share and like really get people to understand what I'm doing. So maybe for if there's other people thinking about this, like how can I make my niche stand out? How can I make this relevant? Maybe it is thinking about like, can I just host like a quick webinar, a quick thing online, a Q&A? Is it offering to speak to if it's another group of providers and things like that? Again, for me, at least it comes back to just like sharing that knowledge because there's always going to
mhm.
be someone who's doing something. So for me, it's just like really being able to showcase and share why it's
Yeah.
important or different. I guess on both sides, but more so I would say that was for like when I was building myself as, provider in Connecticut for clients and things like that.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah. No, that's great. That's great. For practitioners who they serve multiple populations, right? How do you balance niching down with versatility, right? How do you say you're like in a rural community as a healthcare provider of some sort, and you have to treat everything, but still want to niche down to have one as everybody comes to you for that one thing. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I think it depends maybe on like different disciplines that we're in because I know with some providers we can do telehealth and finding
Hmm.
ways to like open up if you're in like a smaller area and things like that. So I think it's maybe trying to find that balance if that's applicable to you and the work that you do.
Hmm.
And I think it's like we were saying earlier, it's like maybe just checking in with yourself of like what does fill me up? Like, do I want to still serve my rural population? And not completely close myself up. So maybe it's like you're leaving a couple spots open to be have more general clients if that is important to you. And it's just maybe checking in with yourself of what feels good. So I think like is was saying if you want to be versatile and have that mix and blend, that's great. And you can really work, I think, on your marketing because you can put it out there of like these are the specific things I do. But like again, it's a big world out there of like lots of different places you can put information. Like you can even have two different ways that you're marketing yourself if you want to
Yep.
have that versatility. And it can
Hmm.
grow in time as well. Because again, especially as I started niching down, it's changed so much over the years. And sometimes I think, like we were saying with misconceptions, it can feel like you said it, so you have to stick to it forever. It's like, no, it can grow. Like you can start opening up more and more. You can start shifting in
Hmm.
those directions you want to go in. So I would say maybe if you want to have versatility or you want to have that blend, that's great. Lean into it and you can market yourself in two different ways and that's okay.
Yeah. So leaning into it, you're testing the waters. How do you test those waters? How do you test that? Okay, I've been leaning. Now I can dive in. I don't swim, so I'm not diving into any damn thing. But
Yep.
you lean into it. As you see in Palm Springs, I barely got my butt in the water. But what you do is like you lean. How do you test it to a point where you feel comfortable just going full board into that niche?
Yeah, I think that it's okay to soft launch something. Like I feel like again, there's like it's such so great. Like if you want to just really like go like 100%, that's great. Do what works
Mhm,
for you. But it's also okay to soft launch something. It's okay to maybe start talking about something more in your marketing or if you're making content about it, posting a story about it, like maybe hosting, like I was saying, like a little mini workshop or something and seeing how people respond. If that helps you just feel like you're kind of leaning into it. So I would say before fully committing, you can just see how it goes. Like take on a couple clients and see
mhm,
what fills you up. I think it can also be looking at if there are gaps that you feel like you're filling in. And so slowly starting to like really talk about why you're filling that gap. So I think it's a pretty based on your personality, I would say, because I feel like I'm like often a 0 or 100 type person where I just want to do it, like, and I want to have it be a
Yeah.
big thing, but it's also okay to just kind of slowly get in.
Yeah. All gas, no brakes, huh? No. So give me an example. Give everybody an example of what a soft launch messaging would look like. You know, you're niching down. What does it look like on Instagram? What does it look like in your community? What's before you go full board?
Yeah, well, I feel like it's so hard, like, to not talk about social media because I feel like that is a lot of our marketing we
That's the
do.
world. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of like where I'm gonna go. Hopefully it feels applicable
Hmm.
'cause I think it can be
Hmm.
applied in more in-person work too. But I think it really could just be like even just sharing like a reel or a carousel about this topic. And if it's seeing and with the caveat, like we were saying though, like just if no one likes it though, that doesn't mean you shouldn't go for it. But it's like maybe
Hmm.
slowly adding it into the things that you're doing. So it's like, again, maybe make a story set about it, maybe make a carousel, make a reel, maybe it's asking someone to collaborate on something who's doing something similar and kind of seeing like that reception, how it
Hmm.
lands, how you feel, see if
Yeah.
it's building and things like that. So I would always say again, make sure you're not stopping just because you didn't get enough likes, because that doesn't always
Hmm.
matter. But that
Yeah.
can maybe look at it or offering again like a little workshop or something if you can do it virtually, talking about the thing that you like. Again, if you want to offer it as a paid offering, great. But also it can be very valuable to offer like a 30-minute work like webinar, workshop, Q&A, like
Yeah.
for free to connect with other people. So maybe even thinking about that. And then if there's that reception and people show up and you're talking about it, then maybe it's hosting another one, hosting one that's a little bit more in depth and involved and keep it growing that way. So maybe just thinking about like again, we it's great to monetize. It's so important to our businesses, but it's
Sure.
okay to just offer and kind of see where it goes and where it grows from there.
Yeah, yeah. Return on investment just on your time and energy,
Mhm.
right? It's like sometimes you don't have to throw dollars at it to market your niche.
Mhm.
Just to keep that in mind. You don't have to, spend $15,000 or something for a 3-month ad on the radio or whatever. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, just get your message out. I guess I guess my follow-up question to that would be like, how long is too long when testing, right? It's like, are you committing to it for 6 months, 3 months, a quarter, a year? What does it look like before? And obviously, I assume if you're starting your own business or whatnot, like time is of the essence, right? Like you can't be slow for 8 months and try not
Right.
to pay your bills or whatnot. So obviously we keep that in mind. But how everything perfect, everything's going smooth. How long should you give it time to for your niche to kind of catch fire?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I would love to say like maybe even like quarterly checking in, like giving it a
Hmm.
few months because it is going to take time for you to again like establish your voice and like really help share why people would want to trust you, work with you, understand the work that you're doing. So giving it a few months, but I think within those few months, it's also evaluating like what seems to be doing well. Are there things that
Hmm.
have done well and can I lean into that more? Like maybe I thought I was going to post like a reel, a this, a that, and that was going to be my plan for 3 months. And if it's like noticing like, oh, actually, people are engaging and seem to be really like enjoying a carousel more or like a newsletter or this, maybe it's like still having that evaluation after a few months, but being okay to shift gears a little bit within that. So I would say give it a few months if you can, if you have the space to. And then
Hmm.
maybe at the end of those couple of months, if it doesn't feel like it's catching fire or growing, looking at why. Like, am I putting myself out there in the right places? Is this
Hmm.
a topic that really feels like it's maybe too narrow or still too broad? And kind of asking yourself that question instead of just thinking like it's fully not going to work, maybe just seeing like after like a couple months, where can I shift if I need to, if it's
Yeah,
still something you want to look at and try to niche down into.
for sure. So what signs are you looking for to know that it actually worked? Right? That quarter check-in, quarterly
Yeah,
check-in.
I think that would
What are
be
you
for
looking
me.
at? Yeah.
I feel like it would be that's like when I like to I feel like that's also just great like calendar wise. It's like, okay, every
Yeah.
3 months I'm
Yeah.
kind of
It
checking in with
works perfect.
myself and seeing how things are going. So I like to do like quarterly check-ins.
Yeah, yeah. And what signs would tell you that it's working? Like, is there for you personally? Is it a monetary sign? Is it a patient growth sign? With like your ROI as far as time on Instagram to patients in the door? Like, what signs are telling you that okay, I can dive in instead of just leaning?
Yes, I do think it can be like an ROI on your time. Like if you're spending 25 hours, like really trying to like market this and you're doing all of this and maybe you've gotten like one or two clients from it, kind of looking at like is that worth the return? Like does it seem like it's growing? So I would say setting goals for yourself and not just one goal. Like if your goal is to have maybe 5 clients or something like that over a few months, having that be a goal. But then if it's also important to say, like, okay, but is there engagement? Like, is there like maybe calls coming in and it is close to being a good fit? So maybe it's not just one like kind of benchmark to have for yourself. So I would say it's probably thinking about did you, whether it was like selling something or having clients, having a number for yourself, a realistic
Mhm.
number, hopefully. Because if
Yep,
you
yep.
surpass it, that's great, but not setting it to be astronomical. Looking at the engagement around it and things like
Mhm,
that, I would say for me personally would be a benchmark to think about. And then again, just like we were saying, that return on time and noticing like, okay, am I spending too much time on this? That's usually possible as well. And can I still
yeah.
get similar results and hit similar benchmarks that I'm trying to reach? But maybe not putting as much into it. Because I think sometimes, again, especially in the world of like social media, marketing, things, it's very easy to get locked and like lost in just so much where you could probably do a little less and still be doing as well.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Now, in regards to that, how do you continue to grow? Like, we just had an example, 25 hours, you're working here, you got 1, 2 patients and whatnot. How I feel like if I'm putting 25 hours a week in marketing for a particular niche, I'm going to get burnt out. Like I'm
Yes.
going to be tired of, I get tired of looking at Instagram for 7 minutes or whatever, or like creating a reel. Like, so glad I got a social media person. Shout out to Peggy for me, but golly, that it's taking so much of a load off of me. But I was starting to feel burnt out. Like I'd set these goals, like I'm gonna do this. I do it for like 2 or 3 weeks.
Hmm.
I can't keep doing it. Like I'm burnt out. I'm done. I'm tired. I got clinic, social media, fam. Like it starts to become overwhelming. What advice would you give to somebody to avoid burning out when trying to niche down? Because you have to stay on top of it. We just talked about algorithms too. Like you have to
Hmm.
stay on top of it.
Yes. Well, I think that asking yourself, like, are there places I can outsource? Because I think like I also have a social media person and it took a lot for me to get there. Also, like
Mhm,
I have tendencies to like want things a certain way and maybe I'm a little bit of a control freak and things like that. And but if you have and thinking about cost versus worth, like we were saying, like maybe right away, like you can't afford a social media person. That's okay. But thinking to
mhm,
yourself, like, is the time I'm putting in realistic? Is it worth it? And are there things that I can kind of share with others and outsource and get support from that make it worth it and thinking about the value of your time as well because I can be the one behind the desk or doing a newsletter and things like that but if it's maybe hiring someone for a few hours a month and then your time can be spent in a more valuable way whether it's putting your face out there talking to others so I think maybe thinking about the sustainability for what you're doing and can other people help you get there along the way and again it can be like even just 1 hour someone supports you with something or
yeah,
1 hour that you set aside for something else so I think really to avoid that burnout is just checking in with yourself of like, is this realistic? Because up front, there's often a big investment if you're really trying to shift
mhm,
gears to something. But maybe
mhm,
it's like we're saying, having a timeline in mind. And maybe it's like, okay, for the first couple weeks, I'm okay to really, really lean into this. And then
mhm,
slowly like start to pull back a little bit while you're still
mhm.
growing, you're still having momentum. But hopefully what you're doing is like starting to kind of like snowball from there. So I
Yeah,
think it's also sometimes too like again asking yourself like what's the point that feels good for me like we all want to grow we want to keep growing and that's important but also being like there might be a point where it's okay to slow down a little bit it's
yeah,
okay
yeah.
because like we got to live our lives at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. Gotta live. Gotta live. Self care. Niching down. Still got to take care of yourself. I
Yeah.
mean, you can't provide for your niche if you're burnt out, tired, and just simply a shell of yourself, nowhere near who you are as a person or as a practitioner.
Mhm.
Um, I guess I just want to know what's one mistake you made when you first started niching down.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
that's a, that's a fun one to think about but like where do we even start there's so many.
Right. So,
I think sometimes when I started to niche down, I think it's great to do like market research and like see what other people are doing. But I think let me in the beginning, especially let that get into my head a little bit too much because I think that I tend to think differently than other people or do things in a different way. So when I was niching, I was like, oh man, like, am I supposed to be doing it this kind of way? And so I feel like some of the stuff I was putting out there and like marketing and connecting with others wasn't as authentic to myself. It was more
Mhm.
so like niching down, but like similarly to other
Yep.
people in a
Yep.
sense,
Yep.
not like
Yep.
leaning into like my humor and my weirdness and like all of those things. And then I
Mhm.
noticed when really just kind of like put that to the side of like just really being myself and genuine and being okay with that, it really was so reflected in the growth
Yeah.
that I experienced. So I think for me, and if I could share that with others, is like be inspired. That's great. Look at what other people are doing, but take it always with a grain of salt and just really highlight like you and why you make this unique and special and important because I think
Mhm.
that shines so brightly. And I think that clients see it, referral sources see it, other providers see it. And I just feel like we can feel that even in like a curated video. I feel like you can still feel when someone's being really authentic and passionate. So I would say
Mhm.
maybe lean into again, your weirdness, your specialness, your
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah. Absolutely. Before we jump into some submitted questions and a couple of questions in here, if someone listening on this show is afraid to niche down, what would you say to encourage them?
Maybe just ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? Like,
Mhm.
what is stopping you? What's the fear? Is it fearing that no one's going to show up? They might not, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. It's okay. It can take time to grow. So I would really say like what for you is the worst fear and then kind of maybe working backwards from there of like, okay, I'm scared that I'm not going to get a single client. Okay, well, what happens if you don't? Do you switch gears? Do you pivot a little bit? Do you reach out to others? So maybe just thinking like, where's the fear coming from? What's the worst that could happen? And then, because usually we can work through it. I feel like we can problem solve it.
Mm. For sure. For sure. No, that's great. That's great advice. That's great advice, especially I mean, I feel like we tapped into so many different things, imposter syndrome and fear and and checking in with yourself and leaning into your respective power, things of that nature. I think it's powerful. I think it's super powerful. Ali, actually, before we jump in, I just want to try something a little different. This is my last
Yeah.
show here. Um, I'm gonna ask a few questions. I want you to give me like one word or one sentence or whatnot,
Mhm.
just rapid fire questions, right?
Okay.
All right. I mean, we've
Mhm.
already talked about it, but niche in one sentence. Go.
Don't be afraid, just do it.
Creativity in one word.
Powerful.
One niche you almost chose but didn't.
Oh gosh. Uh, Perfectionism.
All right. What's harder, niching down or explaining art therapy at parties?
Explaining art therapy.
If your niche was a color, what color would it be?
Oh, I'm sorry to say it would have to be multicolored rainbow.
Multicolor. Okay. Um, Book, quote, or mantra that keeps you grounded in your work.
Mm, the world needs your magic.
Lovely. And we've already asked about therapists being afraid to choose your niche. So thank you so very much for doing that. I don't know why I didn't do that before. That's actually
I
pretty fun.
know.
That's
I
actually
know.
a
I
good
liked it.
rapid fire.
I like it. I like it.
um, okay. Some submitted questions. I'm pretty sure we talked about what if finding your niche means turning away from people you used to see. Actually, this is used to see. So you already had them as your client base, and to now you're going to, you're niching out and they might be afraid to keep joining you or keep working with you. How do you navigate that space? Like make sure they're still welcome, make sure they still feel like they're part of the team, that, like they might be patient or client zero. Like how do you make sure they still fit with you?
Yeah, I think if you've ch kind of changed what you've done, um, and there are still people who are maybe in what you were doing before, I think it's just like whether it's still fostering those relationships and still enjoying the different parts of yourself and your business. I think it's also okay sometimes to, if it really isn't fitting and if you feel like you're not supporting people in the best way, just trying to authentically share, which again, I think can be hard because it feels like you're maybe letting someone go or there's
Mhm.
guilt and things like that. So I think maybe it's just having those very transparent conversations with people. And if they're still, again, if they're still welcome, that's great. It's okay to still have people from something you were doing before, but it's also okay, I think, to sometimes just share of like, there are so many great supports and it's okay. So you're welcome here. But also, I know that I've changed. If I'm not the best fit for you, that's okay too. Like, if the work I'm doing doesn't feel like it's serving your needs, like, this isn't about me, it's about you. Like, that's always okay. So I think maybe for me, it's just trying to be transparent, open, like taking in feedback, sharing myself, like what I'm doing, how it fits, things like that. So I think it's maybe that
Mhm.
blend of just hopefully transparency and just open communication.
For sure, for sure. Transparency is key.
Mhm.
Transparency is key. Hopefully you built such a rapport to them, and doing your professional duty. If you don't fit for them, you can still refer them out, but they know what you're capable of. They know
Mhm.
the type of care that you can provide. So you're just expanding your web of networking in your community, right? Even if it doesn't necessarily work for them and you at that moment because you niche so specifically, doesn't mean that somebody it doesn't come around full circle.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so a couple questions here in the chat from Susan. She's a certified counselor with experience. Her passion at this stage of her life is to provide affordable trauma counseling to clients who do not have income or insurance. Is that a bad niche? As it sounds like I may not be incompetent.
Yes, that's something I am very passionate about is accessibility, especially in mental health care. And I think it can be tricky because you need to make money as a provider. And it's something
Mhm.
that feels really hard, especially, I mean, in all these professions, but I think mental health as well, it can be really sticky when it's like we care and we love what we do, but also this is my job. So I think with something like that, if you're really trying to support like low income and have accessibility, people who might not have insurance, maybe it's looking at your numbers and doing some math of like, am I able to maybe have certain spaces in my schedule where I'm offering either pro bono work, sliding scale, things like that, and needing to balance it out, and whether it's other ways or in with different clients. Maybe for you, it's like, are you looking to find grants or things that might support that? That's a whole ball game, but if that's important to you, so I think a
Mhm.
niche like that is incredible. I think it's really important to me as well, but I think we also have to check in with ourselves as business owners that it is also our job. So how can we have a niche that fills us up that we're so passionate about while also keeping in mind just our businesses?
For sure. I'd like to piggyback off that, Susan. I'm looking to do the same thing, right? It's like I want to offer, no charge care to underserved areas in Denver. How do I do that numbers wise? Like, okay, do I raise my rates? Do I what's my numbers as far as patients that I have to see a day to justify leaving the clinic for a day to provide or rent space somewhere in Denver. Like, as a business owner, you have to wear that hat and you have to look at those numbers. Yeah.
Mhm.
So just understanding like what it is that you can do to put you in the best position to provide for those underserved people. So great for you, Susan. I love that. Question from Stephanie. How did working with your ideal client base shift how your practice function? So changing things like billing, time, clients, and treatment plans. And then how long did it take you to specifically shift into your niche?
Yes, I feel like for myself, like in the mental health world, COVID was a huge shift for me. And so that, excuse me, was almost like a forced shift in a sense. I was working with tons of kids and I loved it, but also it gets to the point where it can get like really exhausting and things like that. And then for me specifically, that forced shift to telehealth and everything shutting down changed the way that I was seeing people and how people were interacting. And it changed, I feel like for a lot of us, the spaces we were showing up in, like my office and things like that. So sometimes it's a forced shift. Um, but it can also be okay to change. Like if you're changing your treatment plans, if you're changing the way that you're doing things, and it's up to you, I think, if it's a slow rollout or if you're doing it kind of quickly and being okay with the transition, because also there maybe will be a couple of mistakes or hiccups. I know for my billing, that changed a little bit too with my billing person. It was having conversations with my billing person of like things I was shifting in where I pulled back in some one-to-one work and just being transparent. So I think giving yourself some grace to go with the flow, to have the change and the transitions, talking to the people, whether it's your team, billing, people you're working with, or if you have like other clinicians you're working with. I think it's just always giving yourself grace. being okay with the transition, being okay with making mistakes because 'cause they're gonna happen. So we at least hopefully we can give ourselves grace, we can get through that little transitionary period.
For sure, for sure. Thank you. Great question. Great question. Allie, Lisa in the chat, will you take referrals from other states? She has a counselor who will likely refer to you.
Unfortunately, I am in, Connecticut as a licensed professional counselor and a board certified art therapist, so I'm only able to be in the state that I'm licensed in. So I do, again, work with other providers and things, but if we're talking about therapy work for me specifically, it is strictly licensed in Connecticut. I don't, have any other licensure at the moment. But thank you. I appreciate that very much.
Let's see. Um, can niche from Jefferson, can niching down also refer to narrowing one scope of practice, specific treatment interventions? Both are similar in narrowing at one's practice, but it feels like the former can have a positive connotation while the latter can have a slightly negative one. So can niching down refer to narrowing one scope of practice?
Yeah, I think so. Like, at least I can speak to like the mental health world. Like, there are so many providers who are really just doing maybe like EMDR, like that's a very specific treatment that they're doing. Or if someone's doing really short-term solution focused work, I think it's for me, I think it's okay to do that because there's generally going to probably be someone who wants that. So I think for me, I think that that's totally okay. And it's just talking about why there's the benefit, why it works for you, like how you can support people in that. So I hope that still applies to whatever discipline the question's coming from. But I don't know, David, if you have anything to add, but I feel like it's okay to just offer a certain type of treatment as well.
For sure. And you don't even necessarily have to niche down. Say you're working in a big PT clinic, and somehow, some way, you're always the person who gets shoulders, or you're always the person who gets low back pain or whatever. Like, doesn't necessarily mean your scope of practice got narrowed, but you kind of end up being really good at that particular injury or particular thing going on because of your clinical experience. I don't think your scope gets limited because you niche down. Like you can always pull from different disciplines. Like me as a physical therapist, there's times where our session is me wearing the counselor hat and talking, and we're talking about what your social determinants of health are and things of that nature. Or um, I'm looking at the nervous system to get things activated. Like I'm not limited per patient to not exercise the full breadth of my scope, right? So I don't feel like just because we niche down that we lose the capacity to treat however the heck we want, right? We adapt, we evolve into the practitioners that we want to be and how we want to treat, right? From either clinical experience, patient experience, life experience, things of that nature.
Definitely.
Um, let's see. There's a particular niche community I'm looking to work with. However, there are other therapists out there already doing the work. Any tips on how to move into a niche space that already has some practitioners?
Yeah, I think like we were kind of saying earlier, it's like really looking at how you're doing it in your own way. Like even if people are doing something similar, things like that, like what would make you stand out? Like what can you bring to that conversation? And maybe sometimes it's even collaborating with other people doing something similar to you. Like I love working with other art therapists. I love connecting with them, supporting them, just sharing and lifting up the things that we're doing because for me at least, there's always going to be a client I can't take. And so if I know there are other people who are doing something similar to me, I would love to have a name to give to somebody to refer to them. So maybe it's like still building yourself up and what you're doing, but really building that community. And how can you, again, just like share the conversation? Well, you're still the expert, you're still doing your thing, you're still bringing that uniqueness to it. But I think it's like, so maybe some collaborating, some connecting, some community, and still highlighting your voice and how it's different.
Yeah, yeah, no, great answer. Yeah, the collaboration is huge. I mean, that's our professional duty, right? It's like not one size fits all, but if there's multiple people who know or niching down to a like that person should be able to get the care that they need, respectively. Yeah, great answer. Um, what questions or prompts might you suggest to help narrow passions and an overarching niche for clinicians who want to niche down?
Hmm. Maybe for that specifically, it's like looking at your schedule and look at what After what, like, clients or certain populations are you feeling really maybe burnt out or drained versus are there some people who you look forward to seeing them on your schedule? And is it because I mean, sometimes it's just the person's really great, but is it because of maybe a certain population that you're working with? So maybe even just starting with your own schedule and seeing, like, what's really filling you up, what's draining you, and seeing if there's any common threads between that. Because I would wonder if there was.
Yeah,
And then maybe if there's things that you're curious about of like if you want to look at different trainings or things that excite you that make you feel passionate, maybe that might be some questions of like what makes me feel excited. It makes me feel excited to go to work versus like I'm in the car or I'm logging in and I'm like, oh my gosh, feeling so tired already. So maybe if that's a place to start to check in with yourself.
for sure. For sure. No, great answer. Great answer there. I think that's, oh, you have two more? Nope, that's everything. Everybody, no, thank you, Ali, so much for answering those questions and the breadth of insight that you provided there. It's truly a breath of fresh air every time I talk with somebody and they share more knowledge. I'm always learning, whether that's marketing, goal setting, niching down, all these things, different aspects of running a business and being or just being a practitioner in general to help me serve my patients the best, but also make sure I'm filling my cup day in and day out. So thanks so much for you all to tuning in with me and Ali. We love chatting about finding your niche and taking practical steps to spotlight what makes you uniquely you. Ali said it multiple times: lean into yourself, lean into your experience, lean into your story. Right. So this will be my last session as your host of Ambassador
Oh,
Office Hours. I know, tear, Jane, right there
I
on the
know.
chest. Tear,
Hey, I feel
tear.
like I just have to say it because I'm the one here with you with the mic. Like, David, thank you so much. Like, you have brought so much to the community. Like, you are also a breath of fresh air. This has been fantastic. So, again, I just feel like I'm the one with the mic on the other side. So, I have to say it for everybody else of just thank you. You've been amazing.
Well, appreciate it, Allie. That means a lot to me. I was very nervous that first time around, but I've grown into it, and I've loved every conversation that I have, and I couldn't have been any happier with you being the final guest and getting the vibe and thrive with you here in this conversation. Um,
Definitely.
yeah, so I'm thrilled to hand over the hosting role. I guess I'm thrilled. I guess I'm thrilled. No, I'm thrilled to hand over the hosting role to our next host, Adele Smedner, the clinical director of Prehab Guys and Doctor of Physical Therapy from Culver City. Adele will be here next month, kicking off her first session on the topic of building your brand identity to grow your practice. Check the chat now for a link to register for that session. I'm excited to continue learning alongside you all. So while I won't be on this side of the screen, and you don't get to hear my radio type voice that my wife says that I have, I'm sure you'll see me in the chat with you. Uh, for now, goodbye. Adios. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.